Welcome to this installment of the Dubb Action Online Summit. Today I have with me Billy Franz, and we're going to be talking about one of the topics that I'm so passionate about because I've witnessed it, I've gone through it. It's how to become a sales leader. Now, there's a couple of factors that we're going to be getting into when it comes to this journey, this path. One of them is empathy. One of them is leadership. One of them is hard work. There's a couple of things that Billy's going to guide us through because he is on this path. So, Billy, if you could just start with a short introduction and let's get into the topic.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Ruben. We're really looking forward to this conversation. But essentially, I'm Billy Franz. I lead SADA's emerging business and channel practice. I came over in 2019, really built out the inside sales organization, revamped the channel, and then now looking to grow and expand the emerging market, our emerging business segment.
Very cool. Now, we talk about this transition from going from an individual contributor. There's so many different definitions of someone that is starting out in the sales industry. There's SDR, there's BDR, there's sales associate, there's sales manager, there's so many different ones. What was your journey like going from an individual to someone in a leadership position?
Sure. So for me personally, my philosophy was always needed to be at the top or really successful at what I was doing as an individual contributor. So I don't think it really, to your point, right, as you start talking about the different avenues and paths forward for success and into the leadership stack, nowadays an individual can go from an SDR to SDR management or ISR to ISM management, even to field sales or field sales to a field sales leadership. So for me, kind of my philosophy before I got into leadership was understanding the various roles and capacities that I needed to be a credible leader. So I, in my personal point of view, I cannot ask somebody to do something that I've never done myself. So for me, it started 10 years ago before I got into a leadership capacity. And it started in the inside sales division, overlay division, then field sales, carrying a bag, then partnership sales, et cetera. And then finally, at that point in time, it was the movement up to the leadership. And then I could understand the entire aspect of the business and then coach people to be successful and give them that mentorship and that guidance.
And you mentioned something that I really connected to, which is you cannot ask someone to do something that you haven't done yourself. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, for me, in my point of view, as a leader, it's kind of the servant leader mentality. And I know we hear it so often now more than ever in every facet, every ecosystem. I mean, you turn on ESPN right now, you'll hear coaches very much lead by example, be that servant, right? The person that's up front pulling the sled sort of thing. In my point of view, I need to be able to roll up my sleeves and understand where that individual contributor or where that rep is coming from and the task at hand. And I need to be the one as a leader to do something and understand and lead by example. So that's something that I personally believe in. And that's something I try and coach towards in the mentorship and guidance of the individual contributors that exist under my leadership.
Okay, so I feel like there's this paradox in leadership that I think a lot of people struggle with, which is that I start out as an individual contributor. I have a pipeline. I'm doing well. I'm hitting my goals. And now my boss approaches me and says, hey, why don't you get into management or a leadership position where now people are going to report to you and you have to coach them. And now all of a sudden, my time is not spent on selling, but rather on helping other people to sell, where now I might have a fear or I might have a concern where I'm spread thin. I actually can't do what I used to be good at. And now I have to focus on other people. So I hear this a lot from salespeople where you hear this a lot from sort of the solo types, where they're like, I actually don't want anyone to report to me. I'd rather just do really well at my pipeline. How does one not have that scarcity mindset and actually approach leadership and management with grace, knowing that now having a team underneath them, they can actually scale themselves up, delegate, and continue to rise in ranks, and ultimately affect more change and make more of an impact?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack on that question. I love it. But essentially, I think from a leadership standpoint, in moving and transitioning from an individual contributor to a coach rather than a manager, is identifying your strengths and being real with yourself about what you can do, what you can deliver on, and then adapting your style and your coaching techniques towards the individual that you are hoping or assisting in scaling and giving that guidance. So going from contributor to coach, I would say being honest with yourself, what you've got for your own core values, what you've got for your style, your ambitions, and then how to relay that and parlay that in the coaching towards that individual contributor with what their style is. So I'll give you an example. I'm a big numbers guy, big extrovert, right? But quite a few of the best top performers in my organization are actually introverts. And it's for me taking a step back and understanding where that individual is coming from, their background, their skill set, and how do I coach to that unique style that resonates with them. Because I don't want an organization that is all one type of personality or one performance culture, right? I want the various details, the various personalities all to shine through, because then we can better relate to our customers, our end users, etc. And it'll create a more cohesive culture when it's all said and done. So I think that's kind of it, is adapting to your team in the sense that you are there to serve them and help them get up the stack.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you said it best. I think that a leader is a servant in disguise. I think the old adage is a master is a leader in disguise, but let's use leader instead. So I really connect to that. That resonates with me. Now, we talk about empathy a lot in leadership. And one of the things that, I've been really exploring is this idea of someone's inner world, having empathetic accuracy, which is truly understanding the struggles that someone else is going through in their life and trying to increase the comprehension of that. How do we become more empathetic leaders, and why should we become more empathetic leaders?
Sure. So, wow, that's, again, I feel like we could go on another 30-minute conversation about that and develop some stoicism aspects of it. But for me, whenever I sit down and I try to lead with the empathy, I think it starts with the conversation with the individual contributors or the leadership that reports to you in a one-on-one session. So naturally, every leader out there, you'll have multiple one-on-one engagements with your team or individuals. When you do that, instead of leading right off the bat with numbers or pipeline reviews or sales or what do you got for me today, what can I assist with, it's let's sit back and let's analyze in the first 5 to 10 minutes of our one-on-one, how are you doing as a person? What events do you got going on in your life? How was your weekend? Not just small cooler talk, but rather really meaningful conversations. Hey, how's your family? You told me this update. You had somebody in your family with an event going on this weekend. How was it? Did you have fun? Did you get to connect with anybody? Asking them about what they like to do and really listen with genuine intent and active listening, as opposed to just asking to check a box and move on. And then furthermore, how can we be better empathetic leaders? It's cultivating and understand what's happening in the real world with everybody that's going, or not with everybody, with everything that's going on day in and day out, and then how that impacts somebody on a regional level or personal level. And that comes back with that human connection, which is harder than ever right now, as we're looking at everybody through a 14 by 14 inch screen on the laptops, but really trying to engage on a personal level at the beginning of any meeting and then giving that active listening back and forth.
Very cool. I totally connect with that. There's this idea of adapting, of pivoting, of responding to our environments. And I think that we've all done as best of a job as we could. And I'd like to get your kind of actionable feedback on how we could become more adaptive to our environments and specifically to people's styles. This idea of we hire for personality, it can't be more true, because you can train someone's skills. In fact, a lot of leaders, they like to hire people with less skills so that they can kind of teach them from the ground up, where they don't have to undo things. What would your best advice be on changing and adapting as a sales leader?
So I think having an honest discussion with yourself about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. Double down on your strengths, focus on those, and go to market with those. And in return on your weaknesses, you want to look for staff or resources or people around you that can augment and offset your weaknesses. And do not look at those people as a threat to you or your career. Really embrace them, their ideas, their construct, and who they are as a complementary feature to your strengths. And then when you go to market, then you're creating this culture, this unique sort of environment where other people and their differences are accepted in this go-to-market strategy. And then from there, how do you really scale? It's bringing in different point of views and letting them have a true seat at the table and listening to their perspectives and their backgrounds through that empathetic leadership, right? And listening to what they have to offer. Now, you may not have to actually implement their ideas or their go-to-market strategy, but to at least listen to them, because that's a different perspective that can be brought to the table. And then you as a leader can go and add gasoline to that fire and that perspective and take it to the next level.
Okay, and then when we talk about next level, I think we would be remiss not to mention this idea of scale and the importance of scale. So there's the soft aspects of leadership, and then there are the hard aspects of leadership. And sometimes when we have a board of directors, when we have a boss, when we have a bottom line, we need to figure out how we can actually get growth, a scaled growth. And scale, the definition of scaled growth is where we don't necessarily have to increase the number of inputs to increase the output. And that's the definition of scale. So how, as sales leaders, can we scale our businesses more?
Sure. So this goes back. This is actually a very unique kind of response that I'll have right here. That's opposite of people, but rather simplifying your processes and procedures to the individuals that exist out there. And by that, I mean, make it simple. If you want your sales team to grow and scale both revenue, margin, whatever your KPI is, simplify it. Get back down to the fundamentals and make it easy for everybody to understand that if you had a board of directors or an EMT come into your room and say, Billy, what's going on with your sales team to this week, this month? What's happening? What's moving? What do you have? I want my sales team to be focused on actively selling. And by doing that, I need to give them a simple fundamental process and procedure on how they can get upstream, up the market, in closing those opportunities. And then resonating that and taking as much off the plate of my team as possible and carrying that load forward. So that's what I would say there. And then also on the scaling, again, it kind of goes back to that leadership aspect that I talked about, with being honest and true to yourself about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and then hire for those weaknesses to complement your strengths, and do not view those individuals as a threat to your career or your growth capacity.
Okay, so that was an interesting one. As we unpack this, we're sort of realizing what some of the realities are and the hopes of fears on this journey of becoming a sales leader. You mentioned a really interesting one, which is being threatened. This is something that I've heard a lot, where someone says, if I go hire other people, is my job at threat? Am I putting myself at a professional risk by doing that? Now, of course, this is rooted in a fear-based mindset, in a scarcity mindset, because ultimately we've all heard this and read this a bunch of times, that we have to continue to delegate, and that's the only way to grow. But speak to us about that, how we can overcome some of that fear, some of that threat that we might get.
Sure. So vulnerability, right, is, as you're talking about there, and overcoming that fear. It's, for me, in my strategy, it is taking the strengths and what I'm really, really good at and focusing and perfecting those. I think you can kind of see it over my shoulder here is I've got strength-based selling. So one thing that I encourage every rep or anybody that's in sales or just any role actually out there to take a strengths finder or a Myers-Briggs style test and see what strengths you test for, and then focus on those strengths and develop a go-to-market plan and strategy around those strengths for you. And then overcoming that vulnerability, just be honest with yourself and be honest with your executive leadership team or your direct manager about where you are weak, and then try and develop a plan around those weaknesses with your strengths in mind to overcome that obstacle. And I think that's part of the thing holding people back is this fear, this imposter syndrome. You never know until you try. I think we also get so caught up in the day-to-day that we're afraid of failure. And in actuality, if we were to let our light shine, right, and get out of our comfort zone, we can see what we're truly capable of and then help others as we let that light shine. So I think it's kind of like you're talking about here with overcoming these obstacles of vulnerability. It's all kind of encompassing that. Try something new. And if what's the worst that can happen? If you fail, you got another job that you can fall back to, right? There's companies that are hiring out there like crazy. You've got to grow and expand. And if you're not feeling uncomfortable, then you're not growing.
And chances are, if you end up having to or getting asked to leave the job where you did have that failure, maybe you were not in the right place to start out with, because, failure is obviously a path to success. And then I think great leaders understand that sometimes things don't work out, and that's why we pivot, learn, adapt.
Very much so. That was very well said. Very well said. That absolutely. Sometimes failure is another path forward, and I think that gets overlooked a lot.
So well said. Yeah. So you were recently voted. Let me make sure I don't mess this up, and I'll get a visual on this. Is one of CRN's most influential channel chiefs of 2021. So speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, it was quite an honor to be on that list, right? Basically, CRN has this. I don't know how they come up with this influential list or go to market strategy, but it's really, really cool. There's a lot of really, really good talent in there. A lot of people in the channel that I've met over the years. A lot of mentors actually too, for that matter, right? That I've had the pleasure of speaking with and getting to learn from and go to market and develop strategies with in the entire channel ecosystem. But yeah, essentially that list is led by a really cool company, right, with the CRN and how they develop talent and how they recognize talent. So it's just an honor to be on that list, and it really speaks to, right, I don't think I'd be on that list if it wasn't for my peers and colleagues at SADA, right, and the team and the organization that I've been able to lead here and getting upstream and being able to scale, right, and have the success. So I owe a lot to a lot of the mentors, a lot of people I've worked with past and present for that award. So I'm very thankful.
Very cool. Well, Billy, I wanted to thank you so much for your time. Where can folks learn more about you, more about your company? Where can they connect with you on social channels? Love to get some guidance on that.
Sure. So you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, right? Billy Franz. I think that I'm the only Billy Franz in Austin, Texas. Or you can reach out to me on Twitter. My handle also is @BillyFranz. So I'm always engaging in sports banter, a little bit of technology conversations, professional talk, right? So reach out. I'd love to connect. I love growing and expanding the network.
Very cool. Well, I look forward to continuing the conversation on LinkedIn and Twitter. And Billy, I wanted to thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Ruben. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.